an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Wizards at War, Chapter 1, Situational Awareness. In this chapter, we find out the answer to the question that I kept asking, which was, why didn't their dad talk about the son? And it's because that wasn't what him and Tom were talking about. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to, is it Patricia today? Or, no, it's Yama for commissioning this episode. And Yama is here in the chat with me. Hi, Yama. And thank you very much to Jacob, who did another chapter breakdown for me so that I am reading the approximate number of pages I should be instead of wildly over or under reading. I appreciate you, Jacob. So yeah, when I talk about like the question that I had before, the last book had the conversation that Nita overheard her father having with Tom. And it sounded, for all the world to me, like he was talking about the son. And it turns out, no. Their dad was talking with Tom about the overall state of, I want to say the universe, but that's honestly not a big enough word. The overall state of existence in the multiverse is like kind of the vibe. And I look, I was wrong about him knowing about the sun, granted. However, this feels like a bigger, worse thing that he still didn't mention. And I understand he didn't really want to ruin Nita's vacation. What was she going to do? I'm sure Tom told him to not say anything until it was time. But I'm just like, I feel a little bit weird about the fact that their dad knew before them when he's not even a wizard. Okay? Maybe I'm a little bit bigoted against non-wizards. Muggles, I suppose. I don't want to do that. I don't want to use anything that she says anymore. We got to come up with a different word. So the start of this book, it's literally like the day after the last book ended, which I wasn't expecting us to pick up right where we left off. If I'm not mistaken, the previous book started almost exactly where the other one left off as well. I might be wrong about that. But there have been a couple times in these books where things are connected a lot more closely than I expected them to be. And Nita is looking in the mirror and just kind of like noticing that her shirt's fitting differently. There seems to be like circles under her eyes. She's maybe grown a little bit. And we find out later that Kit has also grown. And their theory on that is that they spent a bunch of time on a planet that had slightly lower gravity than theirs. And that probably allowed them to expand upward a bit, which is kind of wild. And she says, I looked wrecked. You'd think I hadn't just had 10 days off on a planet that was almost all beach. I think I need a vacation from my vacation, Nita muttered. That is such a thing. I am genuinely kind of concerned about this for when I come back from my honeymoon. I have a couple of, cool down days before I start working again. Owen has taken the day after we arrive home off before he has to start back at work again. But truly, like, the idea that you arrive home more tired than when you left, the problem, I'm sorry, guys, the problem is capitalism. And I say I'm sorry because I just can't seem to talk about anything ever without bringing up how much I hate capitalism anymore. And part of me feels bad about it. And then there's a part of me that's like, I think that's fair. But yeah, we're only allowed such short vacations here in the US. I don't know that other countries have this I need a vacation from my vacation problem. Obviously, it's not the case with Nita specifically, but she was sent on something that was supposed to be a vacation and actually turned out to be low-key errantry. So I do think that wasn't really a vacation, because she was like stressed. Like, I don't know, that doesn't count to me. But yeah, most of the time when we take a vacation, we try to pack in a lot of stuff that we don't get to do other times of the year because we don't have time. So of course we wind up exhausted after, because we have tried to squeeze all of this fun stuff into a very short span. And really what we need is like a good 3 weeks. And we need that first week to get all of our errands done and catch up on a bunch of actual, like, real obligations that have been hanging over our heads. And then we need a week to chill the fuck out and do absolutely nothing and just get stoned and play Animal Crossing. And then we have a third week for us to do the fun stuff that we will enjoy now that we are rested. That's my ideal, personally. Yama says, I was not expecting to have the entire gang still here, which is nice, aside from Link, and especially now that he's king and he's still there. Weird. Agreed. I figured that when Nita's thing ended, theirs would too, because I wasn't really taking into account the fact that due to how all of the people on Oahu vaporized, and I know that's not exactly what happened, but that's a word I'll use, theirs ended a bit earlier than planned. But I sort of had it in my head that they were at the tail end of everything anyway, and once they got home, it was going to be the tail end of their other guests' stay as well. Not the case. And she has this moment where she realizes that there's a zit coming up on her face, and she wants to talk it out of happening right now. But then when she tries to think of the word in the speech for pimple, she can't think of it. And when Tom calls later, or is it Carl, she asks him, and he's like, I used to know this. Can you imagine being able to talk a pimple out of doing the thing? Can I, guys, if I could talk my face out of twitching? Honestly. Oh my God. Ugh, I wish. So... let's see. Pimple. See aposteme. Apostomy? And her dad tells her the phone is for her. And something that I really noted in this chapter, all of the casual uses of wizardry for everyday things, which is not actually like, it's not like we haven't heard about them doing this sort of thing vaguely before. But in the last book, when it started off, Nita wanted some food. Her fridge was empty, and she asks Kit to transfer the contents of his fridge to hers. And it's all, it like, while it is something that she does frequently, it isn't exactly routine for most of us, right? But there's several things that are routine. For one, she needs the phone. And she just, like, holds her hand out and says, if you would, in the speech to the phone. That is not in the room that she is in, I may add. And the phone simply appears in her hand. And then later, when she goes downstairs and wants a mug of tea, she just puts her hand on the kettle and asks the water if it'd boil for her real quick. And it just does. And these are the sorts of things that I personally am super into, is the idea of how one would use wizardry on just a regular morning. You know, guys, I can't even like imagine, especially it's so different because you're not just doing something to an object or a food. You are asking for that thing to do something like of its own accord on your behalf, which is a real different sort of energy. And I'm wondering, if I had like a basket of tomatoes and I wanted them all sliced up, could I ask them to like dice themselves? Could I do that? Or like, what constitutes something that they would be willing to do for me? And what constitutes something that is like kind of outside of their purview, you know? But anyway, so yeah, it is Tom that's on the phone. He says, we are going to need to come over and have a talk with you. Carl is also going to come, and can Kit be there? I really do need to have a chat with everyone. I have a lot of people to get in touch with today, but since you two and your guests are just around the corner, we thought we might drop by and brief you in person. So she goes downstairs, and she has already gotten contact mentally with Kit and told him to come over. It turns out that he's out of dog food and he's really irritated, which honestly, I feel this a great deal. And Carmela is in the background here. Oh, that's right. She gets in touch with him mentally, but it's like a speaker because she can still hear Carmela in the background. And she is asking, is it true that you destroyed a whole alien culture in 10 days? And Nita's like, I mean, it's not true. So they go down, she goes downstairs, and I love that Darine is just like, you're too late. The French toast is over. It's gone. And Nita says something like, I knew I could count on you. Which, honestly, guys, I know that this is such a thing with me, but man, if I found out that people had just been having French toast and they didn't save me any, I would be so irritated. Kids, don't you do that to me. Don't tell me that you even had French toast then. Just don't tell me. I don't need to, don't rub it in like that. Just be like, oh, we had cereal. It's gone now. Don't tell me. And as she's going downstairs, too, she thinks about this dream that she had. She'd been standing somewhere on the moon, and it had been dark. Bright lights were scattered all around her, throwing a strange multi-directional shadow across the rocks and craters, but the sky was blank of stars, as if the whole thing was a stage set. The moon landing was faked. I'm just kidding. And something was growling. Nita suddenly got goosebumps. She opened her eyes. The bathroom, the morning light, the mirror, all the things around her were perfectly normal, but the memory left her feeling chilly. It means something, of course, Nita thought. Lately, what doesn't? And this is sort of the same situation as the dream in the last book, where she is aware that this is some sort of ability manifesting, that this dream means something. She doesn't know what. She doesn't have that kind of the precision power to deal with her dreams yet. It's all very much in its infancy, this power. And so she sort of just has to be like, all right, well, I know this means something, and I guess I'm just going to have to wait and see what it is. And there's not anything else to be done about it, which that is my nightmare, is knowing that something is going to be significant and having no way to analyze it or speed up learning what it means or anything. You just have to fucking sit there and wait. Ugh. I understand that this is part of her learning how to use the power, but it's just so, it makes you feel so helpless, Mordecai says Cassandra. I mean, Cassandra actually, nobody would listen. But I think Cassandra knew what her prophecies at least were, right? It's just, if you don't even know what they are, you just have to be like, well, then why am I having them? What good is this? Why show me this anyway, then? I'd just be so... Again, I know that this is supposed to eventually evolve into more of a power for her, so I know what the point is, really. But I would just feel very frustrated if I were her. So... Let's see. This is when we find out that everybody is still in the house. How many for dinner tonight? The usual, came the reply. 3 humans, 1 humanoid, 1 tree, 1 giant bug. Humanoid king, said another voice. Yeah, fine, whatever. And who are you calling a bug? Or a humanoid? I am the human. You're the humanoids. And there are a bunch of magazines on the table. Several teen girl-oriented magazines of a kind that Nita had sworn off as too pink and clueless a couple years ago. I cannot tell you guys, these sorts of magazines were my jam when I was a teen. even though I knew they were full of garbage. Like I did on some level, I knew. But they allowed me to like mentally live out this fantasy teen life because they all operated. You guys, you know what I'm talking about. And this series is sort of an exception because of the way their parents are directly engaged in their lives. Once they decide to tell them what's going on, they're directly involved even in like the wizardry aspects in a lot of ways. And even before they tell them who they are, that they're wizards, their parents are constantly wondering where the fuck they're going. Their parents are constantly aware that they didn't come home for dinner, or they haven't been coming home right after school the way they were supposed to be. But in so much YA, both literature and television shows, teens just are not under any supervision from anyone. They can just like go do shit. And apparently nobody's parents notice or care. Nobody wonders where they are. They can just call their mom and be like, I'm sleeping over at so-and-so's house. And their moms don't ask, can I talk to their parents, please? Or you didn't ask my permission, so no, you're not sleeping over. They can just do anything. And it's because the story needs to happen and the writers are not interested in making that work within the confines of actual teendom and how parents function. So that also applies to those like teen magazines. And I really enjoyed the fantasy of a world where I could just do whatever and my parents didn't notice. My parents weren't exactly overprotective. That's not really the right word, but I wasn't allowed to...
I couldn't hear what you said.
Oh my God, Siri is answering me. Hello, Siri. I wasn't talking to you. But my parents wouldn't let me stay out as late as my friends. And they would get a lot more anxious if they didn't hear from me than my friends' parents would. Now, I think some of that is being an only child. But I think also both of them had like some bad childhoods and they were concerned about me because things had happened to them and they just didn't want those things to happen to me. So I really loved the idea of just like, yeah, I don't have to come home until midnight. That's my curfew. My curfew was 9:30, like genuinely. Anyway, I love the fact that it turns out the purpose of these magazines is one, for Philip to enjoy the colors. I don't think he can read them, or maybe he can. Maybe the speech translates on paper too. And then it's for Scarrett to eat them. And he basically considers them like junk food and has a really good time with them. I love the idea that the content of the reading material determines the kind of food it is for him. And I just cannot help but come back to how much I wish we could just bring Scarrett's whole species to Earth and let them loose in a fucking dump. And they could just go to town and eat a bunch of our garbage. And it would be so helpful. It would be so great, you know? Meanwhile, Rashawn is here, sucking on a lollipop, wearing an oversized gray t-shirt that said, Fermilab Muon Collider Slow Pitch Softball. Is that supposed to mean something to me? I don't know what that is. Like, that feels like a joke that I'm not getting. But there's an ongoing joke here with how incredibly attractive he is and how incongruous him sucking on a lollipop at the same time is. And at one point, Nita is like talking to him about sugar. And I honestly was really gratified. This is one of those things that it's just like not important, but I was pleased by it. She's talking about him eating yet another lollipop because he's doing that thing where you suck on it for like 2 minutes and then you chomp on it. Because I'm assuming these are like those dum-dum lollipops, which, by the way, are the best lollipops, bar none. Like, so good. So she's saying as he's reaching for like a third one, man, you have really got to chill on your sugar consumption. And when they mention cavities, he says like his people don't even get that. So he doesn't even know what they mean. But then he goes over and tries a piece of her waffle and is like, maybe you shouldn't be so concerned with my sugar consumption, actually. And I love that because what is it? Now, I think I know the answer to this, to be honest, but I'm going to ask the question first. What is it about breakfast foods and the fact that they are absolute trash for your body so much of the time. And when I say I know the answer, I believe that a lot of that comes from people who, like, we used to have to do a lot more physical labor to stay alive for the most part, right? Even if you were not a peasant working in the fields, you still had to do a lot more day to day to just live. A lot more walking, a lot more exercise just to live. So I think that you were like front-loaded calorie-wise in your day with things that provided the most energy because they were very high in sugar, carbs, fat, whatever. But these days, I am somebody, I love breakfast. It's like the best meal of the day by far. However, I can't start my day with just waffles and syrup. I love me some waffles and syrup, and I will gladly have them alongside some scrambled eggs and a couple bits of bacon. But I can't just have the waffles. And Owen can wake up and just eat donuts for breakfast. Are you kidding me? First of all, I could easily eat 6 donuts and not feel a thing. It would be like I didn't even eat anything. Like, they just don't fill you up. There's no substance to that, you know? And yet, they are considered a breakfast food, you know? And there are people who just eat a bowl of cereal. Again, same thing. I could eat like a whole box of cereal and not feel like I had eaten. The only thing that would help fill me up would be the milk. That'd be really the actual substance of that. And anyway, this has just been an ongoing thing for me where I'm like, every time that I see how most people start their day in terms of the way they eat, I'm just like, how are you not absolutely starving like an hour later? It just, that's nothing, you know? And so as she's making waffles and she's like, yeah, this is going to be my breakfast, all I could think was like, oh my God, what is that like? And so for him to actually kind of call her out on the sugar content of that when she's sitting there sniping, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if those 3 lollipops, which are probably pretty small, contain far less sugar than the half cup of syrup that I'm certain she pours over those pancakes. Like, you know, just saying, this doesn't need to be a nutrition like symposium right now, but I just like to mention the things that don't need to be in the story, but that I enjoy personally because of reasons. So anyway, moving on. So this is when she has the kettle heat up. Oh, as somebody who loves tea, this is like the dream. I do have an electric kettle that I can set on stay hot mode, and it keeps the water at a very low boil for 4 straight hours. And that's lovely, because then I can just go and refill my mug if I'm having like herb tea, just add another bag if I need it. But the idea of just being able to instantly boil water, oh, the best. And her father says something about how she's getting impatient in her old age. And I really enjoyed that, because that feels like something that would truly happen. I could see initially when you find out you're a wizard and have all these powers, at least me being a little bit cautious about it, especially because wizardry is fairly fragile. Like, if you don't use it correctly, or if you lie in the speech, you know, there's all kinds of consequences. And then as you begin to get more like used to it and you trust your instincts, you start to just kind of play fast and loose a little bit more often because you're getting more comfortable with it. Yama says, it just seems to me a waste of magic. I mean, the thing is that it's refillable. I would agree with you if they were like maybe still on vacation, for example, and I was concerned that they need to conserve their energy. But, you know, this is just chilling at their house. I see that she can like refill her energy, taking a little bit of a rest after this, eating her ridiculous waffles. And she also likes the fact that her dad, when he says this, it's clear that he is so comfortable with wizardry now. And she has to really stop and like count her blessings at the fact that he is open to this and that he has adjusted so well. They have like literal aliens living in their house, and he is just like, yeah, well, want to come outside in the backyard and root, buddy, while I chat with you? Tree guy? Like, It's nothing. He just truly has just rolled with all of it. And she realizes that, like, a lot of people just never come out to their families. Or they try it and it doesn't work, and then they have to make them forget. And I forgot that that was a thing. That's so heartbreaking, guys. Can you imagine? I mean, I'm certain that there are a lot of people out there who have come out in various ways to their families and wish that they could go back and erase their memory because of the way it went. But, oh my God, that just kills me. That breaks my fucking heart so bad. So her dad heads out to work. And they talk about how Carmela is the one who brought over all of these, like, insipid magazines. And there's a moment where Nita is just looking at Rashawn. Let's see. It was like catching some coolly elegant anime character relaxing between shots, because the bulge it produced in the Wellakit's face looked very out of place against that otherwise flawless facial structure, the emerald green eyes, and the too perfect blonde hair. Rashawn felt Nita's gaze resting on him and looked up. What? It was exactly what Doreen would have said. Nita controlled her smile. I think that we're doing a thing here, guys. And I said in the last book that in many ways his arrogance did remind me of Doreen. And I think I said something about how, like, it would make sense that Doreen would connect with somebody who is so much like her, but also annoyed her because they were so much like her. Because, like, let's face it, guys. There are all different kinds of people out there looking for different things in relationships. But if you are somebody who thinks very highly of yourself, you're often going to search out someone who reminds you of you. And that's not to say that we don't all look for people we have things in common with, but that's not exactly the same thing, is it? And I keep thinking about that episode of Seinfeld where Janine Garofalo is Jerry's love interest, and he and her are, like, almost exactly identical in their reactions to everything. And initially, he thinks he's fallen in love with her. And then after a couple of weeks, he fucking can't stand to be around her. She's so annoying. And that is, like, I kind of feel like the inversion of what's going on here with Doreen, where she meets him. He is so much like her in so many ways that it drives her crazy. And then it slowly begins to, like, settle a little bit, and she begins to realize that she kind of likes him. But I stand by 100% my initial judgment of Rashawn. We're trying to act like he's just, like, kind of amusingly aloof and high and mighty. And that was not the energy he was giving. So I don't appreciate being gaslit about the way he came into this place and the attitude that he was throwing around. Because I know what he was like and how he was speaking to people. And it wasn't charming. There was nothing, like, self-deprecating about it. And his, like, tragic backstory doesn't put any of that in context for me particularly. So now we're just trying to roll with it and be like, oh, he's cool now. And I'm like, I guess, but I'm willing to go with it for the sake of the story. But personally, I don't really buy it. I feel like it was rushed, you know? And I just had to say that. So, this is when the Nita asks the drawer, the silverware drawer, to just open for her because her hands are full. And I have this moment highlighted, guys, because I am so boring. Nita headed into the dining room. The screen door creaked open and banged shut behind her. What? They have a screen door from their kitchen to the dining room? That feels super weird to me. Is that just me? And this screen door is mentioned a bunch of times in this chapter. So I just, like, has anybody ever lived somewhere where they had a screen door? Yama says, I thought she was going outside. It says Nita headed into the dining room. The screen door creaked open and banged shut behind her from the kitchen. And she's sitting at the table eating. The screen door creaked open again. A moment later, a black four-legged shape burst into the room and began jumping on the people at the table. And then later on, when Tom comes by, it's mentioned again that he comes in through the screen door. That is fucking bizarre. I've never seen a house that has a screen door inside to begin with. Never mind a door between the kitchen and dining room. Like, I could see that if you were living in a house that's like also a B&B because you want to keep things separated. But in an ordinary house, that's just super weird. And like I said, it's mentioned enough times that initially I was like, okay. And then as it kept going and it keeps being brought up, I'm like, all right, I don't know what the fuck to make of this. Mordecai says he didn't come in from the kitchen, did he? From the screen door creaked open. A moment later, a black four-legged shape burst into the room. Yeah, Scarrett was in the kitchen. He was in the kitchen eating the magazine. So yeah, he's coming in from the kitchen also. And yeah, the drawer closed itself as Nita headed into the dining room. Philip drifted past her in the opposite direction, brushing Nita with the fronds on one side as he passed. So she heads into the dining room. The screen door creaked open and banged shut behind her. Yeah, 100%. I don't think I'm misreading this at all. But yeah, I just look, it super doesn't matter, but I just found this extremely distracting because I have never come across this ever. Even French doors between rooms would make some sense to me. I've been places where there are French doors and it's just meant to be sort of an elegant, but this is just a weird why. What is the point of a screen door inside a house? Why? What do you even, the screen is meant to keep bugs out. So what do you what is your concern exactly? Anyway, so Ponch comes in at this point and tries to beg for some waffle. Nita does not fall for it. He tries to act well, you don't know if I ate breakfast. And she's like, no, I do, actually. And he tries a little piece of the magazine that Scarrett hands him. And he's like, yeah, that tastes like my dry food. No, thanks. I always wonder about that because we feed our cats only dry food. And this is the first time I've ever done that because my cats don't like wet food. And it's truly the weirdest thing. Probably Ripley would get used to it and start eating it, but Arya just won't touch it. She does not care for it. And I always am do you guys like this? But they seem very excited and we get pretty high quality food. But yeah, I can't imagine being happy to eat dry food all the time either. Yeah, here, see, okay guys, Kit looked over at Nita. As he did, it struck her he looked a little bit different. Is it just me or are you having another growth spurt? You look taller. I am taller, Kit said, looking toward the kitchen as the screen door creaked open again. Yeah, that's just that's a thing that we're gonna just... Yama says some farmhouses have a separate kitchen situation. I mean, they live in the outskirts of New York City. They live in in a borough, I don't know. It's maybe... But it's just a weird thing. Maybe this is a borough. If anybody listening knows, feel free to share. So, let's see. Kit smiled as the screen door slammed once more because Rasham was sauntering out of the dining room. I can't get over how many times this is mentioned now that I'm actually looking for it more. Is he for real? Kit said under his breath. Real enough to fix a busted star, Dareen said, giving Kit an annoyed look. Oh, so we're coming to his defense now, are we, Dareen? All right, I see you. He's a prince? A king, Dareen and Scarrett said in chorus, sounding like they'd heard the correction much too often lately. And Scarrett says... I think I liked him better as a prince. He was so much less self-assured. And I'm like, was he? Oh my God, guys. Again, Doreen rolled her eyes. She made her way around the table and out, heading through the kitchen. Squeak bang went the screen door. Okay, am I being pranked? Why does this keep getting mentioned? This feels like she's like trying to point out to me, isn't this a weird thing? I'm going to mention it literally anytime anybody does anything, because you have to notice this bizarre bit of their house. Is this going to come up? Is this anything? I feel like it has to be important for it to be mentioned specifically so many times. I don't know what to think about this, you guys. Squeak bang went the screen door. So, oh my God, you guys, I want to get some bookkeeping done before I open the shop. See you, sweetie. Once again, the screen door banged shut. I am not kidding. This is in 4 pages, and the screen door has been mentioned like 7 times now. What is happening? How? This wasn't in the other books, was it? I feel like I would have noticed this before. Maybe we just didn't spend enough time in the house? We've been in the house when they're eating. That's not it. I don't know. Anyway, okay. So she goes and puts her dishes in the sink, and she goes outside and she's noticing the active spell around the property so that anything that's non-human is going to be camouflaged when people are looking through this barrier. And Nita has this moment that I really thought was really well written. The leaves on the big lilac bushes across the driveway were out at last, and the flower spikes were growing fast. Nita was glad to see them, though they also made her sad. The winter and the earliest part of the spring seemed to have lasted forever, some ways. Any sign of things being made new was welcome. But her mom had loved those lilacs and wouldn't be seeing them again. Nita sighed. These are like, this is how grief works, where you kind of have moved on from like the main event of the tragedy, but unexpectedly little things will creep up on you that you aren't prepared for mentally. And you just get completely like blindsided. And look, like here, she just sighs and that's it. But I've had moments like this where I will like see something that my dad liked and I'll just like start crying, you know, and he's been dead like 8 years now. And it just doesn't matter. Like you just have a moment, you know, and it always tends to be that I get blindsided and start crying when it's something that I wasn't prepared for, because there are times where you go into something and you kind of know, okay, this is probably going to be emotional. You know, like I went to a Colombian restaurant and he would take me to Colombian restaurants in Connecticut all the time. And they have a very distinctive feel to them. And I went in and I was like, I know this is going to be a lot. It's going to remind me of him nonstop, and I'm ready for it. And I was ready for it. It was still emotional, but I knew, and so I had been braced. But then somebody was walking around the restaurant whistling through their front teeth. And that was what my dad always used to do. He used to walk around the house and whistle through his front teeth. And that was the thing that got me crying, not the like restaurant that I was fully ready for the emotional response to. It was this other like random thing that I would never have thought of, you know? And this is when Nita looked down their street, where the branches of the maples beside the sidewalk, bare for so long, were now well clothed in that particular new spring yellow-green. The leaves that had been small when they first went off on their spring break were now almost full-sized. And this is when Kit says, we only have 5 days left before we go back to school. And he looks at her meaningfully. Nita rolled her eyes. Yeah, I know. The Mars thing. I've been meaning to talk to you about that. When did you get the idea it would be cute to carve my dad's cell phone number on a rock in the middle of Syrtis Major? I don't understand why him saying we have 5 days before we go back to school and he looks at her meaningfully. Is he like, we have 5 whole days to do the Mars thing? Is that what he's meaning? I think that's what that is. Because it took me a minute. Like, I didn't really understand the connection there. But yeah, he does this as like a prank. And that's what the phone call at the end of the last book was. I thought the phone call had to do with Spot saying, uh-oh, repeatedly. Nope. apparently that was just like a goof. And Nita says we can't just run off and start digging up half of Syrtis on our own. We have to talk to the rest of the intervention team and see if they've got any kind of idea where to start. And it's unclear what the research is that they're trying to do here. It's just like, because she says something about how he just wants to run off and be an aero geek. And let's see. Kit had developed a serious case of Mars fever, serious enough that he'd added a map of the planet's 2 hemispheres to his bedroom wall and started sticking pins in it the way he'd been doing with his map of the moon for months. It is cool, isn't it? Nita said, standing there at sunset and seeing the Earth just hanging there in the sky like a little blue star. Yeah, Kit said, it's not the same as when you do it from closer. What is the research that they're trying to do? She says, it'll give you an excuse to do some new research, and there's quotes around that, as if to be like, she doesn't really think it's very serious. So, okay, guys, but they're outside. They're outside. I'm saying this again. They're outside. The screen door slammed again. Nita looked back to see Doreen wandering down toward them. Okay, I have officially lost the thread. Where is this screen door? I don't get it. What's happening? That makes it sound like it's the back door to leave the house. But every other time it's been that they're going into the kitchen. And it doesn't say another screen door slammed. It says the screen door slammed again. That it is the same door as the other doors that we have been hearing about. Well, then what is it? What's happening? Diane Duane, explain yourself. Get over here. I don't get it. All right. So anyway, Nita mentions to Doreen that she did a really good job with the spell around the house and is like, I know this is probably taking a ton of energy. So if you want us to help out with it, we can do that. And Doreen says no, but if it starts to be a problem before the guests have to go, you can make a donation. Spot's holding the spell diagram for me at the moment. Nita blinked. Hey, yeah, where is he this morning? I haven't seen him. He's up in my bedroom, Doreen said, under the bed, saying, uh-oh. I don't like the sound of that, Kit said. Neither do I, but maybe Tom and Carl will know what the trouble is. So, this is the moment when they pull up. And both of them are looking kind of intense. And Nita is noticing that they're beginning to go a little grayer, that their age is showing a little bit more. It's always wild when you start to notice that. As you get older, your perception of that becomes more clear. As a kid, you just take for granted how people look. And time passes so quick, like so slowly for you as a kid. But as you get older, when you start to like notice even your parents are getting older, it's a weird feeling. So they head inside. Guys. Yeah, Nita said, come on. She gestured toward the door. Kit pulled the screen door open, holding it for everybody. I'm so sorry. I can't. Oh my God. This is just too, like, it's just so meaningless, and yet I can't let it go. Oh, I'm sorry, but like, So they head inside, and Anita slipped past them and into the dining room to rearrange the chairs. And she goes into the dining room, but there's no mention of the screen door then. Scarrett, Tom said, I was talking to your honorable ancestor this morning. He sends his best. Does he? Scarrett said, politely enough, but Nita thought she caught some edge behind the words. And she notices that Rashawn is regarding both Tom and Carl with a bit of skepticism, because he doesn't really think that there's going to be anybody of circumstance on Earth, which is just, again, he is just such a fucking snot. And then Carl comes up to him and speaks his language to him. And A sorrow for your new burden, Sunborn. Bear it as it befits you, and lay it down in its proper time, mere cast-off shadow as it is of the greater radiance beyond. Rashawn looked utterly stunned. He bowed to Tom and Carl as if they were as royal as he thought he was, or more so. May it be so, he said, here and henceforth. They nodded to him and moved around the table to get settled. Now those are seniors, Rashawn said under his breath. I was wondering if your people had any worthy of the name. Why? Why were you wondering that, though? Because you're a dickhead. That's why. I can't like him. I just can't do it. Ugh. 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 And this leads Nita to wondering about what actually makes a senior, because, I definitely took it for granted that it was because they were older. And then she's like, there's a lot of older wizards and they're not all seniors. And I was like, oh my God, duh. Of course. But, I just definitely thought it was, they're just older than you, that's all. What? Of course that's not all it is. Normally we'd spend a lot more time being social, Tom said, but today's not the day for it, so please forgive us if we get right down to business. Some of you will have noticed the world's been getting a lot more complicated of late, and seemingly a lot worse. Yeah, Nita said, thinking ruefully, among other things, of one significant change in the Manhattan skyline in the last decade and what had come after. By of late, Tom said, just a little sharply, I mean over the past couple thousand years. Oh, Nita said, and shut her mouth. It's not local, Tom said. Matters have been worsening gradually all over the worlds, and wizards who study macro trends have been concerned about it for some time. And he talks about the expansion of the universe speeding up. And he mentions dark matter. And asks Nita what she knows about it. And she's like, well, it's been missing. And astronomers have been looking for it for a long time, and they've started to find it. And so have scientists on a lot of other worlds, Carl said. Know what's strange about that? That it took us so long? Kit said. Carl shook his head. That all the species who were looking for dark matter started finding it at around the same time. Nita sat there and wondered what to make of that. That does feel like a weird thing. The discovery of or location of dark matter and the increase in the speed of the universe's expansion are somehow connected. Dark matter is being detected in ever-increasing masses and volumes, as if it's been appearing out of nowhere. And in all the places where new dark matter is being found, local space is beginning to expand much faster than it should, thousands of times faster. So everything is getting farther and farther away from everything else, Kit said. Right. Now that's bad enough by itself. But there are also side effects to this kind of abnormal expansion. Mental ones, and effects that go deeper than the merely mental. The expansion isn't just affecting space itself. It stretches thin the structure space is hung on, the subdimensions, the realms of hyperstrings, and so on. If the expansion isn't slowed to its normal rate, physical laws are going to start misbehaving, and since those laws are the basis on which life and thought work, people here and everywhere are going to start being affected personally. It's going to vary from species to species. In our case, the case of more senior wizards, and I don't mean seniors, capital S, but everyone much past latency, it's going to look like a slowly increasing physical and then mental weariness. We're going to start finding it hard to care, even hard to believe in what we're all doing. And then our wizardry will vanish. I mean, that sounds right. Listen, kids, I don't know about you, but that's a mood. Nita looked at Tom and thought with a sudden twisting in her gut how very tired he looked. Yes, Tom said, it's already begun. Of course, this is something we'd try to derail. And basically, long story short, they tried. And it did not work. And that is particularly jarring because I think Nita and Kit and Dareen probably all assume if Tom and Carl, senior wizards, are set to work on something, that shit's going to happen. They will take care of it. And they are out here doing their goddamnedest best, and it is not coming together for them. Nobody likes it when the people who are in authority over them try to handle something and they aren't up to it. That is not a good feeling. Like, no one wants this. And Nita's like, okay, so that's where you were when we were trying to get through to you and we couldn't find you? Carl nodded. None of us was sure when the necessary forces could be completely assembled. And it didn't make any difference because we failed. After that, we were all sent home to our homeworlds to start organizing their defense. Why is this happening now? Not even the powers are sure, Carl said. Excuse me? Not even the powers are sure? I don't think so. I do not accept that. Either the powers are keeping that information to themselves, or you are wrong. I can't accept that the powers just don't know. I will not accept it. I refuse to accept it. So, as long as we've got that straightened out. I don't like it. So, if you guys are going to lose your wizardry for a while, again, excuse me? He just assumes that's going to happen. And I was not on that page yet, kids. Were you guys? Did you assume that this meant, okay, so now you're about to lose your wizardry? I thought it meant if it gets bad enough, we may lose our wizardry eventually if this isn't stopped. But it's like he's just going, well, all right, so you failed, which means you'll lose your wizardry. And he says for a while, which I'm like, that's optimistic. You don't know that. But sure, be optimistic. That's fine. But he just says it. And Tom and Carl do not contradict him at all. He says, who's going to be running the planet? Tom and Carl looked at each other, then at Nita and Kit. You are, they said. And that's the end of the chapter. Again, I ask why. And I'm sure we will find out in the next chapters. But I genuinely want to know why, in the absence of them, are Nita and Kit the immediate ones that they go to? I mean, there's definitely other wizards around their ages out there. Is it just the assumption that they're going to be weakened by this as well pretty soon? Oh, Patricia's saying they're nearby. I didn't even think of it just being like a proximity thing, but that makes sense. Okay. Yama is just saying no thank you in all caps. So yeah, this just escalates so quickly. And I just wasn't 100% not getting it, I guess, because it seemed to me like this all felt like a theoretical, potentially the worst outcome that we can think of if things are to continue going poorly as they have been going. But it's like a foregone conclusion, apparently, that since we just failed this thing, we're gonna lose our wizardry. And that just doesn't seem fair. Like, what? I just don't like it. I don't know what, and Kit saying for a while, they also don't correct him on the for a while. So I guess they are also assuming that perhaps this can be fixed and we will get it back. I mean, says who? The powers? I want to know how they communicate with the powers. Where are they getting their info? How did the powers let them know? Sorry, we don't know what's going on either. Like, genuinely, I would like to know that. Because how do you know, like, how can you guarantee you're actually speaking to them? Can the lone one do a convincing impersonation of the powers that be? I feel like they would know the difference, but like maybe not. I don't know. just all of this feels just very threatening. I don't care for any of it. And the fact that this is titled Wizards at War, also dislike. You guys know, all I wanted from the last book was for them to get an actual cool vacation. Didn't get that. So now we're being plunged into a war. Are they going to get a break? Their vacation was no vacation. They're acting all mystified that they're so tired. Look, it turns out that their tiredness is actually due to a weird dark matter thing. But I stand by the thing about vacations. Yama said, I thought it was all through the manual. I don't know. Is it? Are we told that at some point? I might have just forgotten. Because I read these so spaced out. I would not be surprised if I forgot. Mordecai says the lone one is a power. Oh yeah, that's true. So can he just, can he pretend to be good? I mean, that's what he does, right? It does. But I think they would know the difference. It's just wizards get tricked. They're not perfect. But I don't think all of them would get tricked. I feel like if there were one of them that thought they talked to the powers that be and they got tricked, that would make sense. But all of them, they're all working on this together. They got everyone. And they all have the same message, evidently. So that doesn't feel like it's a trick. That has to be they're on the same page. I don't know, man. I just don't like this. I feel very concerned. And I'm assuming because of how this is going down and all of our house guests are still here, that this is going to be something that they have to participate in assisting with. I don't know how long the span of this book will be, and if we're going to be, are they going to have to go home and deal with the fallout of this at their own homes? I don't really have an idea how much longer they have for their stay. And I wouldn't be surprised if Diane Duane was like, no, I really enjoyed these 3 weirdos that I brought to their house, and I want to keep using them, so we're going to give them some more time and have them work together for a little longer. I'm not going to be mad at that. But I would like a little bit of a hint that there's a reason they feel comfortable staying in this world and not going home if this isn't a local problem. Because I would feel a little bit of urgency to get back to my home planet and see how things are going and ask how the seniors there are coping with things, because evidently everybody's dealing with it. But yeah, so that is how this chapter ends. So I'm a little bit under time, but the chapter was fairly short, and I'm sorry that I spent 50% of this episode asking about screen doors, but that's not my fault. I am dealing with the material that I am given, and it was very screen door heavy this week. So, all right, guys, I am going to wrap. Thank you guys again so much for hanging out with me and for commissioning this. Thank you, Yama. And I will be seeing you guys soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.